Welcome to Worthy of Love, the podcast for ambitious, self-aware women who desire to deeply connect to healthy love. Whether you're single or in a relationship already, this show is here to help you slow down, reconnect with your body, and to help you realize that you are capable and worthy of cultivating and maintaining healthy love, even if you have a history of toxic relationships. I am your host, Celia Antonio. I'm a certified relationship coach and a certified female sexuality coach, and I am so grateful that you are here. Now let's get into the show. Hello, welcome back to the Coming Home to Body series on Worthy of Love. My name is Celia, and I'm so excited that you are here. I created this series to help ambitious women like you ground down into your body so that you can feel radiant, so that you can feel magnetic, and so that you can feel worthy of love. And today we're diving into a topic that you may or may not have heard of before. And if you have heard of it before, you might be curious about it and not really sure how to approach it. Or if you are like I once was, you might have heard of this topic and been like, nah, I'm good, because you are a little bit afraid to go down that rabbit hole and down this path of self-development. And that is sacred sexuality. When you hear the word sacred sexuality, maybe your mind jumps straight to something like the Kama Sutra or Tantra, or something that feels intimidating or out of reach, like having an open relationship or being a swinger. Not that there's anything wrong with those things if you want to do that, but sacred sexuality is actually not just about sex. It's about how you relate to your body, your worth, and it's about your capacity to receive love. And I feel personally that for women, this is such an important topic. This is why I became a certified female sexuality coach, because sexuality and our power and sovereignty around sexuality has been tabooed for such a long time. It's been marginalized. It's been something that if you look at history and you look at like the witch burnings and you look at like how women were treated when a man says that she so-and-so put a spell on him because she seduced him because she was being sexy. Women have been shamed about their sexuality for a long time, if you look at history. And that's why I think is so empowering if you as a woman take the time to spend time on sacred sexuality, spend time on looking at your beliefs around sexuality and what it is that you picked up on, like as you were growing up from all different areas, deciding what you want to believe instead. But I'm going to go back to my notes because I can go on a huge tangent here. But sacred sexuality really is about receiving love. It's about how you relate to your worth, how you relate to your body. And this is why I think that sacred sexuality work is one of the biggest missing pieces in the self-love world. Usually when we think of self-love, we think of bubble baths, affirmations, therapy, and something like yoga, which are all great. But until you address your relationship with your sexuality, I think you're leaving one of the deepest parts of yourself completely out of the conversation. Because sexuality is the most intimate part of you. How you relate to your sexuality is really going to affect how worthy you feel, how confident you feel, how beautiful you feel, because sexuality is very primal. Sexuality is very much tied to our bodies. And while you are here living this life that you have, you are trapped in your body while you're doing that. And sacred sexuality, in my opinion, is like one of the only things that can really help you feel at peace with the body that you live in. I also think that if we look at what we've been taught about self-love, and we give that advice of like, love yourself first, while it is intended to be like, it has good intentions when people talk about this, I think the advice around loving yourself first is still vague and still puts pressure on women to be perfect before we can feel like we are worthy and deserving of love. So what do I mean by that? Like the love yourself first, it's like what I get from it is that we're told that like you have to be doing like the face masks, the yoga, have a great sleeping routine, have a great food routine. Like you have to do all these things and it like pushes you into this perfectionism space. And only if and only when you do this, then you are deserving of love. But I think sacred sexuality gives you the invitation to love yourself in this moment right now with all of your messiness, all of your things that you are aware that you'd like to work on. You don't have to wait until you work on those to love yourself unconditionally and to radically accept yourself. I think self-love messaging still very much centers around productivity and appearance. Like a lot of people will think that like if someone is disheveled that they don't love themselves. Um, there are things online that are like, love yourself so that you can get back to work. Love yourself so that you can look confident to other people. Love yourself so that you can go out and achieve your goals. And like if you want to manifest X, Y, and Z, you have to love yourself more and you have to do this routine and this workout and all and it ends up putting a lot of us, especially ambitious women, with histories of toxic relationships, I feel like it puts us in this like productivity addiction that isn't actually helpful. And rarely do we hear, love yourself because you simply exist. Love yourself because your body is sacred. We never hear your pleasure matters. We never hear that your wholeness, your worthiness, and your deservingness is non-negotiable. No matter what your routine looks like, no matter what you ate today, no matter what affirmations you did or did not do, your wholeness, worthiness, and deservingness is not negotiable. So I'll give like a personal example here as someone who has been a self-development junkie for over 10 years. I started practicing yoga. I used to think that practicing self-love meant pushing myself harder in yoga or pushing myself harder at the gym. And I used to also think that self-love meant if I wasn't feeling too great, like if I was having a bad day, that I could just go out and have retail therapy and like buy myself something. But deep down, I was avoiding my emotions. Deep down, I still had shame about my body, shame about my desires, shame about wanting the kind of romance that I dreamt of. I'm definitely a romantic. Definitely had shame around, like, even though I had such a good routine, if it wasn't like 100% perfect, I would go into like shame about it and I would make myself feel bad about it. So even if we're doing quote unquote all the right things, like all the right things for self-love and doing all the things that we see on the internet of like, you need to be doing the affirmations, the face masks, whatever it is. Why is it that we can still be doing that stuff and still feel unworthy? I truly think that it's because we are skipping the part of ourself that holds our deepest truth, which is our sexuality. Because our sexuality, first of all, like sexuality is like the origin of where we came from. Sexuality creates all humans. And what is that creating when sexuality is labeled as a super taboo, dirty thing? If we're labeling it as that, but we come from that creative act. What is that creating in terms of like planting the seeds of unworthiness from such a young age or from such an unconscious place? Because I do believe that if we're labeling something as bad and this is the thing that made us, I do believe there's this subconscious wisdom that will then make up a story of like, oh, then there must be something wrong with me. And I think life is hard enough already. We don't need that extra thing. And sacred sexuality helps you go investigate those origin seeds of beliefs around what you're making sexuality and your beliefs around sexuality mean about you. So, sacred sexuality is not just about sex. It's about presence, it's about pleasure, and it's about connecting first and foremost to yourself. And I think this is another reason why sacred sexuality work is so liberating for women, at least in my experience from where I grew up. And, I've lived in a couple of different states in the US and have heard from a lot of women their experiences as well. I've read a lot of literature about female sexuality. Women are typically not given as much freedom to talk about self-pleasure. Whereas for men, it is really treated as this thing where we're like assuming all men are doing it all the time. And for women, a lot of women feel shame around self-touch. And when you can take the time to investigate where did that shame come from, you end up meeting your inner child. I think this is why sacred sexuality work really gets to the origin, aside from it being such a primal thing. It's because you can't work on sacred sexuality without also doing inner child work, without also exploring whether or not you have a mother wound, without also exploring whether or not you have a father wound, without exploring beliefs that you inherited from religion, from the society around you, like school, including teachers and also peers, um, anything that sunk into you and that created your internal voice of how you treat yourself. When you do sacred sexuality work, all of that stuff is going to come up, which I find so interesting. It's very interesting that all of these things affect sexuality. It affects how you relate to yourself, and then it's going to affect your life in the bedroom, which is so weird because when you are with your partner, it looks like it's just you and your partner, but really what's also in the room is on both sides, all of your beliefs about sexuality, all of the woundings from your inner child that he, she, or they might have learned about sexuality. Because I don't know if you know this, but kids are very curious and kids will explore their bodies. And it is so common for a lot of the women that I have coached, it's so common that they have at least one memory of when they were a child and they were just curiously exploring their body, found a spot in their body that felt very good to touch, and then they got in trouble for it. That's a very common one. And then that creates this kind of like, I talked about in the previous episode in this series, how when we experience trauma, it like creates a split in the self. And something like this, where you get in trouble for just having innocent exploration as a child because you don't know what you're doing, it creates this split in yourself. It creates this, it's like that first moment of where you're like, oh, I'm bad. There's something bad with me, and there's something bad about my body because when I touch this part of my body, I got in trouble. Something else that you might assume about sacred sexuality is that it's something that you do with a partner. And it actually starts within yourself. Sacred sexuality starts as you slowing down with your own body. And whether or not you are a woman that dates men, we have been conditioned to center men's pleasure in sexuality. And so women will think that sexuality is only activated when they are moving quickly, when they are like following that lens of male sexuality. Women will also, like women who do date men, will think that sexuality is only activated when they're in a relationship. And sacred sexuality really flips this script and helps you connect with your own body. And I think it would be such an important tool for someone who would be susceptible to getting into toxic relationships, because they are outsourcing all of their pleasure to having a partner. So if you are if you were ever in a period of your life where you recognize that, like, oh yeah, the only reason I stayed was because of the sex. Sacred sexuality helps you not do that, because you realize that you don't need someone else to fulfill that for you. And also, it helps you realize, because in sacred sexuality, you treat yourself as holy, as whole, as complete. Then you no longer have the capacity to even be with a lover or a partner who treats you any less, because you have more self-respect. And I've been there myself, so if that's been you, like, it doesn't mean that you're unworthy or not enough. It was just a learning experience in your life. And I think when we do sacred sexuality work, it helps us have a lot more compassion for our younger self. It helps us have a lot more compassion for the person we were when we were first getting into relationships and when we were first having our first sexual experiences, rather than cringing about it. Okay, let's go into another myth. So, something else that you may or may not believe about sacred sexuality is that sacred sexuality is indulgent or selfish. But it's not. I think sacred sexuality is one of the most selfless things you can do, because you end up being way more grounded and present in your body. And that positively affects all of your relationships. It gives you better capacity to listen to people. It gives you a better capacity to really listen from a place of truly listening, rather than staying there and holding in your brain this thought of like what you're going to say. It helps you really slow down. As when you're filled up with self-love, with the deepest self-love that there is, which is sacred sexuality work, you show up more grounded, you're more radiant, you're more generous. And that self-pleasure and body love is going to ripple out into every relationship in your life. That's one of the other reasons why this is such liberating work. Okay, I'll go into one more myth, and this might be popping up in your head right now as you listen to this. And the myth is you have to feel sexy first to practice sacred sexuality. That is not true at all. Sacred sexuality is something that helps you become more comfortable in your body. It helps you find that feeling of sexiness. It helps you uncover the sexiness that it is to be you. It helps you find your worthiness, and it might be very, very uncomfortable at first, but it ends up being fun. And if you are in a space where you're listening to this, you're a little curious, but you're also uncomfortable, and you're like, yeah, this is nice, but no, it's not for me. I'll just share with you that for me, even though so I'm going to take you back to 2020 or 2021. At that point, I had already read a few books that were centered around female sexuality and centered around slowing down and bringing more mindfulness to sexuality and to self-love. But I had the opportunity to join a program that someone was offering, where it was all about self-pleasure and all about connecting, like learning self-pleasure and connecting with your body using tantric practices. And when I saw that on her website, I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't need to be doing that. I'm good. And she had something else that was a business program, and start your business from this place of feminine energy. And I signed up for that instead. I'm not going to mention who this person is, because her business has pivoted and, I've shifted and I don't agree with how she runs her business now. But if you reach out to me personally, I'll be more than willing to share. So I signed up for this person's business program, feminine business program, and there was some sort of glitch in the background. And I received the welcome email for her women's sexuality program. And being a spiritual person that I am, I was like, okay, the universe is telling me that this is what I have to do. So I'm just going to bravely go in and open up the first module. And that program sparked so many, it was such a pivotal point. It sparked so many shifts and so much more curiosity. I did even more sacred sexuality programs and eventually got to a point where I was like, oh, okay, this work is needed and I need to go get certified to be able to share this work. And I share that just to say that I get it if you feel discomfort. And how can you lean into the specialness that you are even here listening to this conversation right now? How can you maybe see this as an invitation from your higher self that you are meant to go down this path of sacred sexuality and realize what is there? I will say that it needs to be done in a way that is very trauma informed and very gentle. And it needs to be done in a way where you feel grounded. And that's why so I have one sacred sexuality program. It's a program called Heart Magic. And in that program, I teach breast massage. But because these practices need to be taught in a way that's trauma informed, in a way where you are not overriding your body, I include breath work in there. I include meditations in there. I include embodiment practices. And I also talk about, in one of the very first videos, I talk about these principles that I want everyone to always have in mind. And these are principles like really paying attention to when you start to feel like a certain practice is too much and letting that be okay by hitting pause. So if this podcast inspires you to maybe sign up for my course or go look up another, like a video on YouTube about sacred sexuality or something like that, and you are maybe doing a practice or doing a meditation that is centered around sacred sexuality, and it feels very overwhelming or triggering at a certain point, please pause. Hit that pause button and be with those sensations. Because I think these sensations, because sexuality is such a primal part of our bodies, and when we are born, we are just these primal beings in a body. I think that when all of these emotions come up, it is a younger part of yourself that in the past wasn't given the freedom to feel. And now that you are an adult and you are making this time in your personal development journey to work on sacred sexuality, it is up to you to allow those feelings to come out and be felt. And it's also a part of the process and a part of the journey. And I think one of the things that can come up, because we talked about perfectionism earlier in this episode, one of the things that can come up is we feel like we need to power through a practice, but sometimes just listening to a practice for 2 minutes and pausing because we felt triggered, sometimes that is the practice for that given day. And then we need to come back to it 2 days later or however many days later. The thing with practices, especially in the realm of mindfulness and sacred sexuality, because it honestly is the same thing. It's a mindfulness practice around your sexuality. The thing with these practices is they are called practices because they are meant to be come to again and again, and your experience will be different again and again. Another example of what this could look like is, let's say after this podcast episode, you're listening to a practice, whether it's from me, whether it's from someone else, doing it in a gentle way can look like just listening to the practice all the way through before you follow along, just so that the next time you go in and listen to it, you know what you're expecting. And so there's a way to go into this type of work that is very gentle, and you are going to want to look out for anyone that is saying you need to power through, because that's the complete opposite of what women need when it comes to sacred sexuality. The powering through and the pushing through is what we are usually conditioned to do in sexuality, which is why it's so common to hear about women faking sarcasms. I'm saying sarcasms so that I don't get banned on YouTube, but you know what I mean. Or like women feeling pressure to just like get to the good part, or like not ask for more foreplay, or hopefully that word doesn't get me banned on YouTube. Women have been already so trained to override their bodies in sexuality, not just in sexuality, everywhere. Because again, how your experience is in sexuality, beginning with the very seed of sexuality with yourself, ripples out into the rest of your life. And so if for you, sexuality is this thing that you wish you didn't have, or you think is wrong, or you have such a internal struggle over, or you just like push aside and ignore, that ripples out into the rest of your life. And every time a woman learns to go against that conditioning, she is then set free. And that's my favorite thing to see. That's why I do the work that I do. I talked about in the last episode in this series how talk therapy and doing like mindset work and all of that stuff can help us to a certain extent, but that the real shift comes when we go into embodiment and somatic practices. Sacred sexuality work is also going to include looking at beliefs, but then, at least the way I facilitate it, those beliefs are taken into the somatic realm. So what does that mean? For example, let's say you realize in a session or while you're journaling or whatever it is you're doing in your sacred sexuality journey, let's say you realize that you have the belief that sexuality is dangerous. So what I would do as a facilitator, if we were on a call together and you were my client, and and we realized that you had this belief, sexuality is dangerous, I would then ask you, okay, take a moment to close your eyes, drop into your body, and breathe. And then when I say this belief, sexuality is dangerous, where in your body do you feel that? Where is that living within you the most? And then what sensations do you feel there? And what happens a lot is the parts where we feel the most resistant in our body, if we're really able to slow down with them, over time, these parts of us will express to us what it is that they need. Over time, we will also discover who these parts of us are. A lot of times it is inner child. Sometimes it's other parts of our personality, like inner teenager, or even just like inner rebel, or it could be so many things. Sometimes people will come up with like, oh, it's a sparkly pink princess with a pointy hat, and she is the part of me that is in charge of whenever I feel sad or something like that. All the parts of us that feel resistance, if you really take the time to slow down with them, you can kind of personify them. And when you personify them, when you slow down with them, you can gain their trust. And then these parts of you will let you know what it is that they need. And as you fulfill those parts of you, or sometimes even it's as simple as just, having had that experience of these parts of you being heard, you feel a lot better. But also as you fulfill the needs of these parts of you, you start to feel more whole, and then there's less resistance in your sex life. There's less resistance in your own relationship with your body. There's less resistance in your relationship with yourself because you are no longer running away from who you truly are. You are facing all parts of you. You are coming to the truth and realization that every single human, including yourself, is imperfect, is messy, is multifaceted, and all of your messy, imperfect, and multifaceted parts are all worthy and divine. And this is my favorite thing about sacred sexuality, is that all of it is seen as divine. Anger is seen as divine. Anger is seen as divine as happiness. Like, they are equal. They exist as a part of your experience, and they are here to help you. I feel like I'm on a like a soapbox today. So to give the example of breast massage, because I have a breast massage program called Heart Magic, I will link that below in case you want to look into it more. There's a live round that's starting very soon on October 21st on the new moon. I would love to see some podcast listeners in there. We're going to get to be on live calls together. So to give an example of breast massage isn't just touching your breasts. Some days, again, bringing in that piece I talked about earlier of needing to bring in gentleness and being trauma informed. Sometimes doing a breast massage practice doesn't involve touch at all. Sometimes it's just closing your eyes and listening to a practice and imagining yourself doing the practice. Sometimes it's closing your eyes, listening to the practice, and sitting with the feelings of resistance that are coming up. Sometimes it's hovering your hands without touching your body. Sometimes you might be touching your body, but you're fully clothed. So breast massage isn't just about touch. It's about repatterning the heart and nervous system to associate intimacy with safety and not danger. And I cannot think of a deeper way to show yourself self-love than by showing yourself that intimacy is associated with safety and not danger. A lot of women will resonate with being raised in purity culture, whether or not you are religious, or whether or not your family is religious or was religious. I feel like purity culture very much can sink in from the neighborhood you live in and from the collective country culture that you might live in. And in purity culture, women learn that their sexuality is dangerous or shameful or dirty or wrong or disgusting. I can't tell you how many one-on-one clients I've had who have shared with me that they feel a ton of disgust around self-touch and around connecting with themselves sexually. And that only is in their minds because the external world told them so. And it is extremely liberating when we can step away from that. So then sacred sexuality becomes this reclamation where you get to say, my body belongs to me. My pleasure is holy, and I am not here to shrink. My body belongs to me. My pleasure is holy. I am not here to shrink. My sexuality is sacred and divine. Like just saying that out loud. I hope that hearing these words helps you relax in your body. Again, even if it doesn't, that is welcome, and that might be part of your journey today. So, sacred sexuality it's basically awareness and mindfulness, but at the deepest level. And a big part of sacred sexuality is noticing each and every sensation without judgment. So to bring that to a kind of embodied level here while you are listening to this episode, I invite you to take just these next few moments. First, take a deep breath. If you're driving, keep your eyes open, please, or pull over. It might be better to pull over. If If you're driving or operating heavy machinery, please be safe. But just take a moment, take a deep breath. No need to close your eyes or anything, whether you're driving or not. And then when you're ready, see if you can notice, and it's okay if nothing comes up. See if you can notice what sensations can you feel in your head? What sensations can you feel on the cheeks of your face? What sensations can you feel on your neck? If you're noticing any sensations, are you able to speak these sensations out loud? What sensations do you notice in your shoulders right now? Are you able to speak those out loud? Maybe in your shoulders, you notice something, but you don't really have the words for it. And speak that out loud. Speak that out loud. So that would look like, I feel something in my shoulders. I'm not sure what that is, but hello, sensation in my shoulder. I'm here with you. How's it going? What's up, girl? And then continuing this practice, I invite you to notice what sensations are you able to notice in your arms and in your hands. And maybe you can notice some sensation at the very tips of your fingers. And if you were able to speak those sensations out loud, if you were able to put words to these sensations, what would you speak out loud? Are your fingertips tingly? Do you feel prickles or bubbles? Do you feel a softness? Do you feel a warmth? It can be helpful sometimes to hear names of sensations. Okay, now I invite you to notice what sensations do you feel in your heart space. Say hello to your heart and the sensations you feel here. And if you are able to put words to these sensations, speak them out loud. Traveling down to your womb or womb space and pelvic floor. What sensations are you able to notice here? Can you speak those out loud? And then I want you to take a little moment to celebrate and honor and dignify yourself for however this little mini practice experience was for you. Whether it was hard for you to notice sensations or not, you still did this practice correctly. And if this was your first time doing a practice like this, it is normal for it to be hard. One of the things that really helped me when I first started practicing the felt sense in my sacred sexuality journey, this is very much like the beginning foundational practice because everything stems from here. But what really helped me was being given the invitation to label a sensation as numbness. So rather than when I demonstrated in the shoulders being like, hey, sensation in the shoulder, I'm not sure where you are. Sometimes if you tune into a body part, could be the shoulders or somewhere else, you might not feel anything. And speaking out loud, oh, I feel numbness, can help in your journey because it's not just putting words to sensations, which is extremely helpful in secret sexuality, but it is also accepting your current truth right now and being like, this is what's going on in my body, and this is welcome, and this is okay. And that is what I think is like the summary of what you receive from sacred sexuality work. So I hope that this episode inspires you to maybe follow this podcast if you're a new listener. I hope it inspires you to go down the rabbit hole of sacred sexuality like I did. And if you are someone who wants to be in a space where we dive into secret sexuality in a way that is trauma informed and very much centered on sensual self love, then I invite you to join me in my sensual self love program, Heart Magic. And Heart Magic teaches the art and practice of breast massage. There's going to be a round of live calls added to the pre-recorded course, and we are starting those live calls on October 21st, 2025. I hope to see you there. There's going to be a link below. And thank you for listening to this episode, and I look forward to continuing this series with you, the Coming Home to Body series. And until then, be kind to yourself. Know that all parts of you are welcome. All parts of you that happen to be present at any given time, they are welcome. They are sacred. They are special. And you have been worthy of love this entire time. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye.